Hey folks, MasakoX here. Next week it's a big day, but this story has now recently gotten itself into one of its big turning points. But for now, we would like to take a moment to just introduce you to the story if you are new to it, and I also say welcome to you. This is the tale of Goku's wife Chi-Chi and her possible journey in becoming a Dragon Team member. If that moment at Fire Mountain meant that instead of simply choosing to marry Goku and leaving him to it, it instead led her to also follow his lifestyle, discovering what it meant to protect Earth, as well as a home from future threats, things could have gone very differently. Granted, things got much larger in scope for her than just her village, but what it did lead to was a rather thrilling and compelling narrative that also added what Dragon Ball has been severely lacking: using magic. In the last part, we touched upon the time skip between the end of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, which is so often neglected. Chi-Chi and Goku are married, and they've had their baby Gohan, whose rage boots are far less unpredictable thanks to Chi-Chi's means of controlling them and her magical temperament, tempering Gohan's inner anger as well. However, when Uncle Raditz showed up and threw his hat into the ring, it spelt disaster for the team, with Gohan being taken from them when the Pineapple Saiyan bailed, taking out Chi-Chi as well in a surprise attack Frieza would have been proud of. Piccolo, throughout all of this, was sickened by this display of cowardice, vowing to help the team get Gohan back from the depths of space, reflecting what he had done previously when protecting Chi-Chi against launch. But the problem is that they don't have a means to get into space. And speaking of space, Raditz took this time to nurture his nephew in the art of being a Saiyan. He knew that the Earthlings would come for him eventually. They were that sneaky and resourceful. So he had to act quickly if he was going to make any whelp of a relative worthy of being part Saiyan. The first few days out in space were the hardest. Gohan wouldn't listen mostly to him, and would wince at any moment that Raditz would coldly kill people that got in their way. Raditz tried everything to tap into Gohan's Saiyan nature, but the kid wouldn't budge. Then the boy realized something. If he was going to get out of this alive, he had to not try and run away, or attack this guy who unfortunately was related to him. If he hadn't been, it might have made running away easier. Surely someone out there would know where Earth was, or even what Earth was. In the face of this figurative brick wall, Raditz realized that he had to go big. He had to go all out to try and tap into Gohan's potential. His parents were quite strong for such a basic planet, so they took a trip to Alia as fast as his pod could make it. Those bugs there were quite strong, but Raditz could take them on, especially after his little battle with the Earthlings and that little Zenkai boost. That had given him a little bit of a leg up, so now he sat at 2000 instead of 1400. Raditz also had a little surprise for Gohan. The one thing that had gotten his interest was his story about Vegeta. The one thing that had managed to calm the boy down and get his interest were stories about Prince Vegeta and his supreme battle skills. Gohan's a little boy. Play fighting and action stories always go down well. At last, Raditz thought, something that wasn't crying. When they get to Alia, who was there to greet them? A little surprise from Uncle Raditz: Vegeta and Nappa. At first, the prince wasn't all that impressed with Raditz coming back with a little kid. But Vegeta! This little Kakarot has the potential to be something quite remarkable. His parents were relatively potent, and the mother also was very versed in the dark arts. Who knows what she taught this one? Really? Said Vegeta, looking down at the kid. Go on then, show me. Gohan, who had been very caught up with the stories and legends of Prince Vegeta, tried to search for his inner power, trying to impress him, and as if by magic, it came to him. His body had heard the call, and a flaming bull rose from him. Nappa tapped his scouter. Whoa! 2000! Hey Raditz! He's just as strong as you are, and he's barely out of diapers. Isn't that funny? Nappa, please! There's time for jokes later. Well, turns out you're right, Raditz. This one is impressive. Gohan powered down. It took a lot out of him, but he was so happy that Vegeta was impressed. This hero. He had another challenge, Vegeta. If this one was half Saiyan like Raditz had told them, then this next task would confirm his usefulness. Meanwhile, Chi-Chi had managed to cross Snake Way after months of running, jumping, and brief moments of using her magic to fly across particularly windy bits. In this time, she was starting to wonder why she was doing all of this. Granted, it was quite the honour to be the first person in 500 years to be crossing Snake Way and meeting King Kai. But in her heart of hearts, she was starting to grow weary of being on the front line. She had been thinking about retiring, actually. Stepping back a little bit. She had wanted a family for so long, and now she had one with baby Gohan. She'd been sort of pondering in the back of her mind about asking Goku whether she could step back from martial arts training constantly, and instead settle more into a life of peace, calm, family life. Unfortunately, she couldn't do that right now. The fact that she was dead and Gohan had been taken by that group of a brother of Goku's meant she had to keep going. I know that sounds very familiar to Gine, but hear me out. For as long as it would take until Gohan was back with her, she'd carry on. Only then could she contemplate scaling anything back. All of this time alone on this long and winding road gave her clarity, plenty of time to think to herself. She reached the tip of the tail of the way and looked up. There was a small planet, thousands of feet in the sky. Chi-Chi then began to ponder that orb. How was she going to get up there? And without Nimbus to help her, it wasn't going to be straightforward. She dug deep into a well of magical energy, summoning up as much as she could. To her surprise, there was more than she had thought, since she didn't actually understand entirely that the other world's energy supplies were far more plentiful. You didn't tire as much here, as she noted previously. Using this trait to her advantage, she pooled enough blazing power to leap into the sky like a rocket. It worked. She shot up really quickly. But then halfway there, she felt something dragging her forward, not of her own volition. She had been caught by the orb's gravity, promptly slamming into the ground at full force. She didn't die from the impact, obviously, since she was already dead. But it hurt. King Kai saw this go down and found it rather funny. "Yeesh, that didn't look like a happy landing." Chi-Chi got up and dusted herself off like nothing had happened. She introduced herself, and King Kai gave her the challenge to try and make him laugh. Maybe an impression might work? She knew she would get grief from her former teacher for doing this, but this had to be done. Surely, if Barber could communicate with the afterlife, she'd know about King Kai and vice versa. Chi-Chi then ruffled her hair up, scrunched her face up to mimic Barber's, and spouted off words and rhetoric that the witch would probably say. King Kai indeed knew Barber too well. She was a right grouch, and to see this kid pull off such a perfect roast of Barber was excellent. He let out a loud guffaw, thanking Chi-Chi for that immensely. "You have no idea of an old windbag she is! How'd you know her, kid?" "I trained with her." "Ah, didn't peg her as a teacher. Oh well, you passed my test. On with the training. How long you here for, anyway?" Chi-Chi counted on her hands and figured that she had about less than a year to train before the Dragon Balls on Earth couldn't bring her back. So, that much. "Right, we better get moving." On Earth, Bulma had set about tasking Roshi and Oolong to find the Dragon Balls to bring Chi-Chi back, and yet she was also dealing with the task of coming up with a plan to somehow get into space. However, luck came in the favour of Mr. Popo, who then showed them all Kami's old spaceship from centuries ago, earlier here than in the original story. When Bulma took it in and retrofitted it with tech, this meant our heroes could head out and look for Raditz and Gohan. It took them a few weeks since Gohan's kidnapping, but it wasn't too difficult in the end. The ones to go to space were Goku, Krillin, and Piccolo, the same ones who had fought Raditz. Tenshinhan thought about going with them to help, but thought it might be best to stay here in case Raditz pulled a fast one on them all and came back to Earth. Somebody had to hold the fort, and so the trio set off with Piccolo taking on board the instructions left by Bulma in how to pilot the ship. And for some strange reason, this wasn't difficult for Piccolo. It sort of felt natural. I wonder why. In space, the three of them formed an alliance. Clearly, Raditz saw something in Gohan, and if menaces from space were to come back to Earth in the future, which they probably would, it would be best to train the kid up. Piccolo offered to help as a mark of respect to Chi-Chi, the only one of them to try and reach out back in the day when he was at his most belligerent. As the expedition began, Vegeta's challenge had become clear.
Alright then, kid. If you want to prove how Saiyan you truly are, find the first being here and kill them.
What? What?
Kill them. That's what we Saiyans are best at. Showing our dominance. Establishing our pride and power.
Nappa then interjected.
Yeah, your uncle did it when he killed your mom!
What? Raditz looked furiously at Nappa.
He wasn't supposed to tell him that!
Gohan rounded on Raditz and began to fume.
You killed my mom?
Gohan, the point was that
Gohan roared, and his raging bull exploded forth and began to pound on Raditz into the dirt. Nappa and Vegeta, though, didn't try and help. They found this utterly hilarious and chose to double down on the Raditz hate because it got something out of the kid. And as their dog's body was being wrecked, the two of them thought they could use this kid perhaps maybe as a weapon. He was really strong and was now bodying Raditz. Who knows what he could do when he was all grown up? Maybe they could take a shot of Frieza with this one. And so, when Gohan calmed down and Raditz was left battered and bruised, Vegeta proposed a plan, aping Gohan's soft nature.
Raditz, how could you be so cold? To tear away this one from his mother in such fashion? That is beneath us. You are a disgrace.
Gohan looked at Vegeta, and since he was in a suggestible state right now, he found the prince to appear to be quite noble in comparison to his uncle. If he could, he would smuggle himself inside Vegeta's pod there and then, get away from Raditz. But he rounded on his uncle.
She'll be back. My friends will find the Dragon Balls and wish my mom back. Then she'll make you pay.
Dragon Balls? They can wish people back, you say? Can they do more?
Vegeta commented, and you know who was listening.
Raditz, your new mission is to train this little Kakarot here into something more suited to work. Do not interrupt us until he is ready to fight Nappa over here and not die. You have your orders.
With that, Vegeta and Nappa set off. Gohan, in that moment, towed the line. He liked Vegeta, or what he was presenting. He seemed far more decent than Raditz. Of course, we know that's a big lie. So he would comply if it meant he could train with Vegeta one more time, if he wasn't going to be going home anytime soon. But, thanks to that flare-up of power, the likes of Goku, Piccolo, and Krillin out of space could sense Gohan.
That's Chi-Chi's thing, all right. We're coming for you, son.
It was a few more days to get there, but they hadn't moved. Alia was soon upon them. They had been training, and Raditz wasn't doing so good. He had already taken a beating from Gohan in training, him being very keen to stamp his authority despite being only 4 or 5 years old. And to top it all off, the boy's friends then arrived to rub salt into the space wound. And despite being already somewhat injured from the training, Raditz was keen to beat down his little brother, regardless of what he was feeling. The Saiyan in him getting the better of his judgment this time around. Gohan ran over to Piccolo, hugging him, to which the Namekian wasn't accustomed to. But the Green Man, instead of shirking it, told him to head for the ship and wait there. It was clear that in this fight that Raditz wasn't going to win. He was tired against 3 fully rested fighters, and they had gotten stronger to boot. He was on the back foot. There was no moon on Alia to rely upon either. So, before Raditz felt the grasp of death begin to loom over his head, he called time.
Wait! All right, you can take the kid. Just let me go.
Piccolo wasn't moved.
Why would we do that? What's in it for us?
Raditz smirked.
Because if you don't, I'll call my friends. They're at least 10 times stronger than myself, and they will not hesitate in going after your home and scorching it to the ground.
This got their attention. Goku wasn't bothered in killing Raditz anyway. He was a coward, and they had Gohan back with them anyway. They had gotten what they wanted, and so Goku showed mercy.
Fine, you can go, but I don't want to see you again.
Fine by me, Kakarot. You're a shadow of a Saiyan. Not worth my time.
And with that, the parties went their separate ways. When Raditz got back to Frieza Planet 79 for urgent medical attention, that was much needed, he had been stewing over this exchange. By now, the Earthlings would probably be home, thinking that everything would be fine. Chi-Chi would probably be resurrected for those Dargan bowels or whatever. Well, Raditz had a plan. As one last big screw you to his little brother, he chose to tell Vegeta and Nappa about Earth anyway. That's what you get for messing with Raditz. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. So what do you folks think? Do you think Chi-Chi's training and the Dragon Team can stop Vegeta and Nappa? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I will see you in the next video. Catch you later!